2, 3. Welcome to She Rocked It. This is the place where ladies are talking about the ways we're blazing our trails and the things that put the wind in our sails. Hello and welcome to the She Rocked It podcast. I'm your host, Karen Gross. And if you love what we're up to here at She Rocked It, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Feel free to send us a comment. We love to hear your feedback. And also feel free to share this episode with a friend, because we truly believe that when women listen to, learn from, and lift one another up, we can all rock it. And I could not be more thrilled to share this next conversation with you. This is a hero of mine that I miraculously collided with in California at a smoothie joint. This is a true story, and you're going to hear more about it in just a moment. But today I am speaking with Cindy Chupack. Cindy has won 2 Emmys and 3 Golden Globes for her work as a writer and producer of shows including Sex and the City. Yes, you've probably seen her name emblazoned in the credits, along with Modern Family, Everybody Loves Raymond, Better Things, and most recently, Fleishman is in Trouble. She also made her feature directing debut in 2018 with her film Otherhood, starring Angela Bassett, Patricia Arquette, and Felicity Huffman. True rock stars, all of them. She's also performed stories for the Moth, written essays featured in the New York Times Modern Love column, guested on NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, and even had her own relationship column in both Glamour and O, the Oprah Magazine. Cindy has also authored 2 hysterical memoirs, including the New York Times bestseller, The Between Boyfriends book, a collection of cautiously hopeful essays, and The Longest Date, Life as a Wife. Her first children's picture book, We Waited for You, was released in 2023. Cindy is originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and went on to get her degree from Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism. And in this conversation, she shares her fascinating journey from journalism school to becoming the executive producer of one of the most iconic TV shows of all time. And what I really appreciate about Cindy is the way that she shares her real stories, her real talk through her own journey and also through her characters. These are stories that so many of us can relate to. And I want to thank Cindy for sharing her voice in such a courageous way. And not only that, through her website, she invites others to share their voices. She literally is the anti-gatekeeper and shares how we all can do these things. And what I also love is that she shares a little window into her writing practice and how she stays motivated and energized. So without further ado, let's hear from Cindy Chupack. Cindy, welcome to the She Rocked It podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Maybe we should just quickly start by telling how we, fatefully collided. Do you want to tell us a little bit, or how do we, to have this moment with you is so special, and I can't take any credit except for the universe bringing us together, right? And smoothies.
Yes, we were I was at I walk my dog. Hold on for
bring in the dog. Oh,
this puppy.
Come on.
I walk her along the beach because I live close to the beach in Marina Del Rey, to this juice place. And I went there with her and got my usual date banana smoothie milkshake, basically.
Yes.
And then you were there with your brother and his kid?
Yes, my nephew, Jamie. Thanks. Shout out to the fam.
And yeah, we just started talking, and you basically mentioned your podcast, and then I can't remember why I can't remember why you asked for my name or whatever. We were going to get in touch, and then you immediately ran back and said, "Wait, I know your work. I'm so happy to meet you."
I did. I totally fangirled. I was like, Cindy Chupack. Okay, I know. I'm going through my mind, going through real quick. Quickly Googled you, and I was like, oh my goodness. And you were so gracious. You were so gracious. And you were also so supportive of the She Rocked It vision. Like, I was so touched by how you saw what I'm doing, what we're doing here, and so honored that you wanted to be part of this community. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for doing
Incredible. Of course. And thank you to my nephew and my brother for also bringing us to the smoothie joint that day. I was visiting them out there. So I wanted to hear a little more about your journey, Cindy. I'm so interested about women's paths, and you've had an interesting one in that you kind of started at Medill College of, the journalism school at Northwestern, which is an amazing program. Kind of got your start in advertising, and the rest is history. You ended up getting into comedy writing and, of course, TV, film, books. How did you make that pivot? That's a courageous one from, I want to say, a little more of a traditional, maybe even a safer path as a writer, to one that's more creative and obviously has turned out quite well for you. But how did that happen?
I just knew from a young age I wanted to write, kind of because an early teacher told me you're a writer, and I liked that identity that it was like a
Thank you,
title.
teacher, for noticing. Oh, they make a difference, those teachers, right?
Yeah. And but I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I really didn't know anyone in the business, and I just thought journalism seemed like a way to make a living as a writer. But Northwestern at the time was very hard news oriented, and I had like an internship at a newspaper, and it wasn't really my kind of writing, but I did enjoy like a feature I wrote for the paper that was the longest school bus route in the area. I took the bus in the morning and came back in the afternoon. There was this whole like mini drama with all the kids on the bus, and it was really fun. So I wrote a whole piece about like all that was happening. And it was a little more like the kind of thing I ended up writing. So it was a taste of that. And then, I got a job in advertising out of college. And while that job took me to New York City, and while in New York, I just started realizing there was kind of a different kind of writing of journalism than I was thinking, when I was in Chicago, Mike Royko was my first kind of like example of a humorous first person essay writer. And then in New York, I started seeing that, and there was a magazine, I Love New York Women, that always had a back page essay that was first person, kind of humorous or smart.
New York Woman, I love that.
And now it's defunct, but it was a great, like a very good magazine of great women's voices and smart. It wasn't like just fashion, and it was like a really good magazine. And so it always had this back page essay that, and I just sent one into that magazine, and that they ended up publishing. And that kind of started everything for me, because it led to a little bit more magazine writing. And then also some producers saw it and encouraged me to think about television writing.
That's amazing, and how that kind of led to that next chapter. But you had to have the courage to kind of write that article. And so what gave you that courage to kind of just send out that first piece of kind of personal writing?
It was kind of naivete, I think, because I had learned at Northwestern how to query a magazine, but when you write an essay, you really don't, a query is like, I have an idea for an article. Would you want this? And then you kind of attach your writing credits, which I didn't have. But essays, you pretty much send the piece, because it's a short, humorous piece. And it's really about it's about your voice more than the content. So it's kind of a great way in, which I still believe, because it's something that you just like, they have a chance to read it, and they can either stop reading or keep reading it, but they read it before they have to decide if you're qualified. So I just sent it. I sent it in kind of blindly. And I remember my boyfriend at the time said, like, you're right, because it was a piece about New York. And he's like, okay, don't be disappointed, because seemed like everybody will try. It just seemed like a long shot, but then I just felt good about this piece. I thought it was funny. And then they published it. So it was exciting.
I love that. It's like, you got to believe in your own voice too. Sometimes there's going to be people who are going to try to rein that in, but you believed and you did. I love that. Yeah. And oh my gosh. And if you've read any of Cindy's writing, for words on a page to be laugh out loud funny is really something. If you're not actually watching this on YouTube, I'm currently holding up one of Cindy's best-selling books, the Between Boyfriends book, which is absolutely hysterical. Great collection of essays. And another book I have here, The Longest Date, Life as a Wife. Go ahead and get these books. This is like what you want to be reading and laughing to. And also, Cindy, you have some hysterical pieces on the Moth, which if you may know, all of you may know, is a kind of storytelling series. And you're a terrific performer as well, because you delivered these stories with such great timing and humor. So tell us a little bit about, your writing process and your practice, because it takes a lot. It takes solitude. It takes discipline to be a writer, to produce all this incredible writing and comedy. What give us a window into kind of your practice around that.
Well, I did want to say in the Between Boyfriends book that you have, there's a piece called I forgot if I called it the New York Marathon, I think, but that's the New York piece. That was my first piece that started
Oh my God. Thank you for calling that out.
it.
Yes, I love that.
um, let's see, I mean, it's varied over the years now that I've been writing so long, but I usually actually enjoy writing and it's not torture for me. And but the early part of figuring out what I'm going to write sometimes can be torturous, like the outlining or the just breaking a story and figuring out the structure. But once I have that, the actual writing of scenes is really fun. And I've continued to sort of cross train and continuing to do essays while I'm doing television writing and film writing, because that's a very different kind of writing. And even comedy is different than the drama shows I've been on. So I've kind of challenged myself to try a lot of different kinds. And the variety keeps it really interesting to me. And working with really good people keeps it interesting to me. Like, I love just learning new ways of, like, a show that's kind of out of my comfort zone, I'll still try. But the essay writing is just a good thing for me to come back to because it's just my voice. I don't have to write the stage direction. I don't have to filter stories through characters. I can just like sit down and write it. And I can usually do those. And then sometimes I'll tell them as stories, or sometimes I'll try to get them published, or uh, I feel like I always try to get it published somewhere. And it just feels it doesn't always happen quickly, but it's like feels good to just be able to write it and get it done, because television is so, like, you have to wait for a lot of people to greenlight things and casting, and it's just a whole process if you get that far.
Wow. That's so interesting. I love how you said you're cross training all the time. That was a really cool way to think about it. And do you like have, I don't know, your favorite desk or like a morning practice of writing, or are you like a night owl? What does that look like for you in your life? And how do you just stick to it when, the going gets tough when you're trying to put those words on the page?
Um, well, I'm in my office right now. I never write here. I only write in bed. I really
I
like writing.
love it.
I like writing in bed with my laptop on my knees and my knees up, and like
You must have a back pillow. Is there a back pillow happening
I
or
just
no?
prop up and the pillow. Probably
Yeah.
terrible, but I just really prefer writing like that than sitting at a desk. At the desk, I feel like I can do everything else. Like, I do my bills, I do my to-do lists, I organize, write notes. I can do anything else, but if it's creative, I don't want to be sitting at a desk doing it. I don't know why.
I'm totally the same person. If I told you how many speeches I wrote in bed, if I told the CEOs I wrote them for, they'd probably be, clutching the pearls. But yeah, what is it about bed? Maybe it just gives you that kind of relaxed state of mind, and you can just
Yeah.
get in that zone, right?
Yeah, and well, you're not surrounded by everything else that,
Mm.
just that feels like work. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like that kind of a job where you should be, for me, sitting at a desk. But I know different people have different strategies. And I used to feel like I needed a whole day. Like, when I'm writing an essay, I can take a whole big chunk of time, and I kind of like a big chunk of time so that I can just get lost in it. And if I'm being disciplined, I pretty much need to turn off my Wi-Fi so that I don't, which is tempting, because when you're writing, you often want to like look up something, or it's not necessarily you're thinking you're going to check your email. You're thinking, I'm going to go and just see if anybody else called, a movie this name, or if this character, you just like think you're going to just do something that's helpful to your writing, but then you get totally distracted. So that I'm really trying to be good about. And I guess, so I used to really like big, long chunks of time, and that still works better for me. But I do
Mm.
know other writers, and I am starting to kind of believe in now the dedicated hours, especially as a mom and with other things. Like, just knowing you're going to put in however much, 3 hours, or, 2 hours, or 4 hours, or 6 hours of writing every day, and just let yourself off the hook when you're done with that time, as opposed to feeling all day like you should be getting to it, and I have friends who do that like first thing in the morning. And so then their whole day is clear and they don't have feeling like I should be doing more. And then I love to have a good scented candle when I'm writing. Don't know why, but that makes a big difference.
I love it.
And also that I sometimes will take one if I'm going to like a hotel, or going in if I do have an office at a show, just sort of helps still keep it that homey feeling that does make me feel creative, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I definitely, um, when I have a deadline, I do sometimes kind of break down how many pages I'm going to need to do a day. And that just helps me focus of like, okay, so this is what you need to get done. And it makes it
Sure.
less overwhelming if you know you have like a whole screenplay to just think I'm going to do this many pages a day.
I love that. And you're remarkably generous about sharing your experience with others and with other women. And on your website, you share like, here's how you submit to Modern Love column and the New York Times. And like, I think I joked when we met, like, you're like the anti-gatekeeper. And it's so refreshing how like forthcoming you are about like how to raise your voice, for other people to raise their voices in ways you may have. So why is that important to you? Why is that kind of part of your DNA that you are really committed to also sharing this, especially with other, women interested in raising their voices?
Um, well, I've never felt like there's just one pie, and if you get a slice, I have less to eat. So I think some people approach life that way. And I understand because when I started in TV, there weren't that many women. There was like one woman per room usually.
Mm,
So I guess it did feel even like it does now to white men are now feeling like, well, now that we're letting in all these diverse candidates people don't want. So I guess that happens sometimes practically, but eventually it all levels out. And for me, at least for the writing, I feel like um, I just feel like so many people have good stories they could tell. And my friends have like, not necessarily they're going to make a career as a writer, but maybe they have one great, essay that would be a great modern love. And it's such a good feeling to have it published and have that validation and
yeah.
get the sense of people responding to it. Probably the same reason you do this podcast to inspire women. I feel like it's so much
Thank you.
just taking the chance of like trying something and being okay. You're not a published essayist yet. So if they say no, they say no, send it somewhere else or whatever. You tried, you got yourself to write it. But I feel that's the first barrier for so many women is just believing they have a story to tell and just a concrete place to send it to me helps demystify that. So I really did want with my website to try to say, so here's the guidelines of what you need to do. Start thinking about a story, and it's not all such a mystery, but it seems like a mystery when you're just starting to think about it.
Yeah, it's so nice of you to help demystify and kind of take some of those barriers away. Um, and I wanted to
I'm
ask
also
you,
just kind
oh
of
yeah.
calling your bluff to all the people
Yes.
who like say they'd love to do that or they feel they should, or I don't know, just do it then. I'm just saying, here's everything you need. Go do
I
it.
love that. Take the barriers and the excuses away. Then it's on
Yeah.
us. It really is on us then, right? I
Yeah.
love that. It's a beautiful, beautiful gesture in so many ways. And I wanted to just ask you also a little bit about your life as a producer as well. And I feel like, talk about a mystery. I feel like there's a little bit of a mystery of like, what does an executive producer actually do, day to day? How do you get into that? Like, can you give us a window into that world?
Yeah. Well, television, it's actually one of the few mediums where the writer kind of rises up through the ranks. And executive producer on a TV show, there's a lot of them because sometimes it's just the agent or manager of the star, and then sometimes the actors get an executive producer credit. But the real important credit, um, among the writers is if you're an executive producer, sometimes you're also the showrunner, and that's like the buck stops here. And like on Sex and the City, Michael Patrick King was the showrunner, but I kind of worked my way up to exec producers. So both like Jenny Bix and I were the highest level writers, and we helped. And then he was also the highest level writer. So we would all try to divide up the business of running a show and running the writer's room. And so there's just a lot to do, like casting and editing and being on set and hiring the department heads and pitching the stories to the network. It's kind of the whole business of you're just managing this group of people and keeping it all pointing in the same direction. On film sets, it's often becomes the director who's really that person. There's kind of the director is the showrunner on a film set. So they're the ones making most of those decisions. And there might still be other producers on a film set and some practical producers like who are just doing the budgeting and helping keep it all going. But creatively, it's like the director on a film set, and then in television, it's like a writer who either created the show and is the showrunner, or maybe somebody who was less experienced had the idea and somebody else came in to showrun and work with that writer. But it's really the whole business of like steering the show.
Thank you for breaking that down. I didn't really know kind of how that all worked behind the scenes. So, and of course, there's so much we could talk about Sex and the City, such a meaningful show in my life and so many women's and everyone's life that, really got what you were doing there. I have to just say, I had a cabaret show that I performed for 5 years called Sex and the Single Singer. Which was very much inspired by that moment. I was like in the heyday of all that. And so I feel very personally grateful for, the candidness that you brought to women's experiences, dating, looking for love, and the misadventures also having lived in New York and dated in New York myself. You really nailed the craziness of all of that. Give us a window into, creating that show. Did you know at the time that it was going to be this cultural juggernaut as you were working on it?
Not really. And I came in the second season. So it was created by Darren Star, who based on the book by Candace Bushnell. But the book itself, when I first read it, I was like, I lived in New York for 3 years and I didn't know this. It didn't feel real to me really until I realized, I just wasn't invited, but all that was going on. Like the parties at Prada and the like fashion shows and everything. And I just felt like this is a whole different New York. But then I kind of realized, it's just the higher levels, sort of next level. I was still just out of college when I was there. So it was fun to sort of realize how to kind of flesh out the book and bring those characters to life and increase like the friendships between them. That was kind of the job of the show. But anyway, when I joined the show, it had been on a year on HBO, which was still kind of not as well known. It was just around the time I think The Sopranos happened too. So it was like us and The Sopranos starting to make a bit of a name for HBO at that time. And it wasn't clear how many people were watching pay cable then and whether people were really watching this show. But then when I joined the second year, the show won a Golden Globe for the first year. And that was the first sign I remember like being with everybody. It was like the first sign that like people are watching, people are loving this. And it's like not just a little show on cable. But I joined it not even caring if it was going to be a big show because it just seemed like it was talking about all the things I wanted to write about and that I was talking to friends about. It felt so relevant and fun to me. And it was just like gravy that then it was really sinking into the culture. And then after a while, like in New York, you would just hear people talking about it on the subways. Or one time me and all the writers were at a restaurant in one booth, like because we were filming nearby and we were working on a story. And in the next booth, we heard people talking about Samantha and her cancer. And it was so funny. We were like, do we tell them we're the writers?
Oh my God. That's like I know we've made it moment. Like here we are. Yeah. And they're talking about our show. Oh, I love that moment. What a like a satisfying feeling as a writer too, to just know that people are literally chewing on your words there.
And then that was when, oh my God, I feel like I've been doing this so long, but back when it just dropped on Sunday night at a certain time. And so people were all talking about it on Monday.
Yeah.
Like everything's streaming. You can like sort of watch anytime, but it was still that model. And that was kind of fun to just hear the reaction on Monday.
I love that. The water cooler conversation the next day was like all about it. Oh, that is a beautiful moment. And what an exciting moment for television too. Like you said, with The Sopranos kind of was a golden age, in that moment that you were part of.
We were filming at Silver Cup Studios and they were filming at the other end of it. And it was funny because our craft services for our show was like pretty healthy. And then theirs was like meatball subs.
I love it. And never the two shall meet. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Oh, that's a great detail. I love that. I could just see that. Oh my god. But did you all date one another is the question, right? No, I'm
We
kidding.
didn't date,
Did you
but we
date
did
any of
share
the
some.
guys over on that side? Okay.
But we did share some directors. And I know like when they would come to do, like Tim Van Patten did some of the great episodes of The Sopranos, like the Pine Barrens. And he did some really, but then he came and did our show and he did like a few episodes I wrote. And one was the one with like it had, which I can't even remember what the episode it was, but it had the prom, like the gay prom that it was all that glitters, I think. And Stanford was going to this gay prom and Carrie went with him. And I remember Tim said, like, this is so nice. Like, we're just sitting here laughing, like no one's dying, no one's being killed.
Ah, little different vibe on the other side of the
Yeah.
studio.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love this. That's amazing. And do you feel like, since that time and, Me Too, I think happened somewhere in the course of these past years since all that, like, have you seen the culture of Hollywood and film and television change? You feeling like there's more women who are empowered in some of the roles you've had? And what can you tell us about that?
There's definitely been a change for more women. It's still not nearly enough. Like the statistics are still ridiculous how few women have done, the films that are getting seen and nominated. Like you kind of end up niche sometimes, or like a woman when you're hiring for a film or a position, the men have credits and awards and a woman maybe has like one or two films. So it's still hard to like get in and you have to like remind yourself like to just compare the work instead of like the credits because men will always have a leg up on that side
Wow, right,
doing this for so long.
right.
So it's still quite a discrepancy between how many women are doing it, but there are more and more. And I feel like there's definitely an awareness that there was a total lack of women. And then there was an awareness there was a total lack of like diversity. So that's also, starts as kind of a mandate from the studios and then finally becomes just good practice, which it always was, just to have diverse voices. And I've had some great experiences on staff. Like Everybody Loves Raymond was a great staff that was mostly men, but really nice guys. And, I haven't had an experience of like not being treated well most places. But
Asterisk. You said Everybody Loves Raymond was a good set.
yeah, that
Yeah.
was great. Like almost every show I've had has been great.
I really appreciate your honesty, by the way, on all of these things. Thank you for all of this. That's like your calling card, I feel like, is you are unapologetically honest and open in your writing. I don't even know if like you're using first names. You talk about some of your exes, but it's like no holds barred. And I really, like I said, it's so refreshing. I mean, it's honest. It never feels malicious. It never feels like you're trying to be hurtful. It's just the truth, and the truth is sometimes so painfully funny, and you capture that. But like, what gives you that courage to just say the things, not spare the details necessarily? Because I don't know, it's just incredible, and I think some people are afraid of insulting so and so or not going there. So what gives you that courage?
Um, I can't remember when I first did that. Sex and the City sort of helped teach me because I felt like we weren't villainizing the men. It was kind of examining like what women do to get in our own way and how we are as friends and kind of just commiserating. I think commiserating rather than instructing or advising, I always really liked that kind of writing. And I felt like that's what we were doing there is like just saying this happens to all of us, this kind of horrible date or funny thing or, embarrassing thing. To put it out there felt really cathartic, and to see that it reached an audience felt really cathartic. And so I kind of, whenever something's really been painful or hard, I kind of want to figure out if I can write about it in some way that feels, because even in comedy, like the things that make you mad or the things that you're most embarrassed about or that you most feel guilty for feeling are usually the best things that you could do, that you could talk about, because like nobody's really, or they're afraid to talk about it. So I think those things of like, like that you're just embarrassed about having that thought. Like my dad, he died last year, but he was difficult.
Sorry.
And thank you. But he was difficult. And while he was alive, I remember like, this all sounds bad now that he's dead. But anyway, like there was this, we were looking at long-term care for him. And basically my mom could be happy anywhere and my dad could be unhappy anywhere. And it kind of felt like, why do we have to spend so much for him to be unhappy? And then we have less money for mom to be happy. And so one place said, like if he wasn't quite ready for that level, and they said this will, speed up the aging process for people if they're not ready. And I was like, by how much? So that feeling was it's such a terrible thing to say, but I feel like writing about that, and I've read other people writing about their aging parents, or when they're, like just being kind of irreverent, but honest about how you feel about, because it's expensive when your parents are aging if you're supporting them, which my sister and I were. And,
oh my gosh. You just have to laugh about some of these things. It's just like so painful. We all go through it. We all get it. And like, yeah.
So some of my worst breakups or divorce or trying to get pregnant, like when I feel like there's not enough out there that I wished I was reading or hearing, or that people were talking to me about, and like infertility. And also I want to figure out, is there a funny way to do it? Even though it's a serious subject, that's like the challenge to me, is to make it something that we can at least like laugh through the tears or cry through the laughter at these things that we're all experiencing that are hard. I felt like the things that I was reading about infertility were very serious, and then usually ended up with the happy ending of having a baby and, or somehow getting a baby. And I just felt like while I was still in the thick of it, there was nothing, and it wasn't really helping to have everybody's success stories when you were still trying.
Yeah.
And you're necessarily going to, finally get pregnant after years of trying everything else, So we ended up adopting, and that was our sort of happy ending. But I like writing about things when I'm still in them, so that I can sort of figure out what help other people, I guess, who are still in it. That was a very long answer to your question, but it doesn't feel my other really, I like to write essays as if I'm writing, and also television, as if I'm talking to friends. That's kind of how I think about it. How would I say this? And are these things I would talk to my good friends about? And I don't really have a line sometimes between, I just maybe won't use the name. I'll say my boyfriend or my ex-husband. And I'm a little more careful now that I have a daughter about, talking about her dad. But I just try to talk like I'm talking to friends.
I feel like know you so well, even though we just met, because I've read your stuff. I mean, like, but like your first husband, if I may say, like, when you've written a lot about how he turned out to be gay. I think it's a term that you even said in one of your titles, after 2 years of marriage. And you've written a lot about this, but you seem to be amicable with him still. Like he's cool with it. It's, was it ever like, or other folks you've written about, like, were they ever like, oh my God, Cindy, like, how dare you? Like, I'm going to sue you. No, it never happened, I guess, huh?
No, there's, especially if it's going to get published in a magazine or even be in a book, there's usually lawyers vetting it that will say what they are worried about you saying, or you shouldn't say, or sometimes they want to check in with the person. Like when I did write about my ex-husband and realized he was gay, they wanted to check in with him because, was that going to out him to other people? Or, I mean, I don't know if some of the men in my life love it that I'm talking about them, but I feel if I was, it's still my life, so I have.
It's like Taylor Swift. Come on, you get what you're cutting into. You know what she's done, what she does.
Don't mess with the writer.
Don't. Come on, Cindy and Taylor. You all know what you're getting into. Come on. Right?
I mean, that might be at least because it's sort of like you come out of it with something. If you get it, like, I guess for Taylor, you get to write a great song about it, and also it's a way of kind of recapturing the narrative. Like, no, you don't get it. I'm not the victim of this thing that happened. I'm making this my own and digesting it my own way, putting it out. It's not really PR. It's not spinning, because I will definitely admit things that don't make me look good often. So it's not that. It's just like, I guess just feeling like you're in some kind of control of your story.
I love that. That's a great point too. Yeah, you get to tell it. You get to own it.
Yeah.
And your story now, personally, you're a mom, you're rocking it in your life in California. I know we were sort of touching briefly when we met about, having written for years about relationships. You had relationship columns in O Magazine and Glamour, and they asked you. I love that essay, by the way, about I think it was in the Between Boyfriend book about where they're asking you, how do you juggle multiple men? And at the time you didn't have one man to juggle. I mean, so tell us about your, if you will, a little personally, tell us personally about your dating life now or your romantic perspective now. Do you feel like you want to be in a partnership? Do you feel like, after going through this journey you've been on in your life that you would rather be single? What are you seeing out in the world right now? Give us the lowdown now from you.
I've almost always been optimistic and resilient and kind of kamikaze about like getting back in the plane after terrible crashes. But I did just write a piece for Elle magazine that was the headline is "He slept with the housekeeper and I woke up in ancient Greece." That was
I read it. It's hysterical.
It was like my post-divorce relationship that seemed so dreamy. And then it turned out he'd been sleeping with the housekeeper for 2.5 years. And it just felt like, really, first of all, I feel like I've had enough material world. Like I would like just a good relationship.
Stop with all the fodder for writing for a minute.
And then am I really still, is there still some version that I didn't see coming? Like, I can't believe. Yeah, I feel for the first time, like I really do want to just try to just be single and not be worried about that next relationship. Of course, there's still a part of me that I do like being partnered, and I like the idea of getting old with someone and like sharing your traveling. And, I see older couples that are still in love, and it really makes me like think, oh, I still want that someday. But I think this is the first time I'm really trying. I mean, I'm kind of okay with just not even thinking about it. I really don't want to get online and date again. I mean, I've done that. I just feel like I've done it all, and it's a good time to just try to just do my own life for a while.
I love that. And I love that women can make that choice of just living life on their own terms. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we don't need to find Mr. Big necessarily.
No.
I always felt a little bit like Carrie was going to end up with someone, but what if you, Carrie, someone walks into the distance and just kind of figures it out, right? Without needing the guy.
There was a lot of debate about that, if that was sort of should have been the ending of this series, because is that kind of saying you still need a man? But I feel like part of me felt like, well, if we can't write a happy ending, what, or that felt like the happy ending for her in that moment. But I do know plenty of friends who, I feel like if you just, I don't know, there's plenty of relationships that make your life worse than if you were alone. And I kind of have a good life alone, and I have my daughter and I have my dog, and I love where I live and I like my work. And so I've added men to that. But if they're not adding to it, like if they're just going to be going along on trips that I'm planning and paying for.
Amen.
What are you bringing to the table here? Otherwise, I can do this with friends and my daughter.
Nailed it. Oh my God. So right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think they need to be additive, or you can still have a pretty good life on your own and I am kind of enjoying just being able to make my own decisions. And it has freed up a lot of my brain to be not in a relationship right now. Like I've got plenty to think about, and I don't think I realized how much of a time drain it could be if it's something that, I don't know. I seem to meet people who need a lot of emotional or financial or some kind of support. And I spend a lot of time doing that and caretaking, and it's sort of like nice not to do that and have that whole part of my brain freed up to just be creative and do my own thing right now.
I love that. And we still do have to kind of push back on the pressure of it. I feel like I'm in a partnership for almost 6 years, and we live in separate homes. And, people ask, when are you getting married? I want you to get married. I want you to live together. And like, okay, folks, everyone can define this for themselves, right? Maybe we love each other more because we have our own homes,
Yeah.
right? Or like, don't rush to do. So I appreciate you sharing your perspective, because I think that women still need to have to be a little defensive sometimes to say what you're saying about like, hey, I actually like having my brain space. I like having my physical space. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, right?
No. Yeah. And us, same thing with kids. I think like I have friends who don't have kids who are leading very happy lives, especially now that I'm older. Like I feel like maybe there was a time when everyone was having kids where it felt like you had to push back much more, like you're saying. There was a lot of pressure, like, but aren't you going to, or do you want to? And you had to declare. But now those are the people I see really traveling and having really nice homes. And it's interesting. Not like I wish I didn't have a kid, but I see that like if you can push through that time when everyone's making you feel bad about it, you might end up like being the model couple for your friends who are in the thick of the teen years and everything else.
Yeah, thank you. I wish 10 years ago when people were telling me to freeze my eggs that I had heard what you're saying right now. So thank you. I don't have kids personally, but yes, we still have to stand up for living our own lives, whatever that looks like. And shout out to everyone making that choice for yourself, mom, not mom, whatever you do. But we have the right to make that choice. Ahem, government.
Yes. We should have the right.
We should have that right. Cindy, I could talk to you for 10 more hours. This has been so amazing. I'm going to let you go because I know you're a busy lady, but I can't let you go without asking our last question. As you always know, one tip, leave us with one tip to rock it, because you are such a rock star. I'm such a fan. I'm so blessed to get to talk to you and know you, but leave us with one tip to rock it.
Okay. I would say just do it. Like just try the thing that scares you. Don't feel like it has to be perfect or even good, or even it doesn't, if it's a book, it doesn't have to get published. If it's a one-woman show, maybe you're just writing it. Maybe it might never happen, but that's okay. Like just take that first step.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the She Rocked It podcast. The She Rocked It podcast is produced by Karen Gross, Tori Marchioni, and Erin Phelan, with audio engineering by Tung Chen. The She Rocked It theme song is by Karen Gross and Tim Motzer. Thanks to everyone who supported this episode on Ko-fi, with a special thanks to Bethany Lyons of Lyons Den Power Yoga in New York City. Be sure to check out Lyons Den the next time that you're in Manhattan, and check them out online at Lyons Den Digital. If you would like to support the She Rocked It podcast, you can do so at Ko-fi, that's ko-fi.com/She Rocked It. We so appreciate your support of these episodes. And if you want to follow along with everything we're doing, you can check us out at SheRockedIt.com and on our Instagram page. Rock on.